Everybody, as you know, I am not at the owners' meeting this time, and without further ado, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell is starting his press conference. Technically, he started it, but I just wanted to get the whole thing in. So here,
Versus reporters from the Fall League meeting in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
What's so quiet? Okay, I think you all know we just concluded the meetings, 2-day meetings. Over the course of 2 days, we spent a fair amount of time talking about the game. And obviously, as we're celebrating our 100th season, the competitiveness of the game, quality of the game, we're really excited about. And we talked a lot about fan reaction to that game. Obviously, all those fan metrics are incredibly positive, and we're excited about our 100th anniversary season and what's still to come. Today we spent, I know you've gotten a number of updates from others, but today and this morning we spent time on a labor discussions, an update on where we are with those discussions. Two, we spent a great deal of time talking about diversity and inclusion and our efforts in that area. We talked about health and safety again. We've spent a fair amount of time on our Inspire Change effort, including representatives of the Players Coalition, Aeneas and Anquan. Aeneas is here and Anquan's right behind him, who lead the Players Coalition, and they did a report, and we had a good discussion on those issues. I think those are the main topics from this morning, so I'm happy to take your questions.
hey Jack, how you doing?
Yeah, microphone, speaking with Mark Maskey,
You mentioned that there's a lot of NCAA negotiations. What are your views on that right now? What's your level of optimism that a deal could be made in the coming months?
Well, Mark, I think, the discussions have been consistent. We've had a very open dialogue. I think we all know the various issues.
He's talking about the NFLPA negotiations toward the new collective bargaining agreement.
When or how soon? I'm hopeful that we all see the benefits of doing something earlier and that we can get something done, but that's still to be determined. But we'll, as I've said before to you many times,
Hey, BT,
I think the issues will continue to do in the context of the room, because that's the respectful way and the most productive way for us.
Steve White, AV.
Same here.
What was your reaction to the preseason numbers on concussions?
The question is, what was your reaction to preseason
we
numbers on
try to get behind
concussion?
the numbers, try to see where they are. There are positive and negatives in some of that. Positives being we saw less in practices, and that some of the drills that we've taken out of the game, I think, had a positive impact. In the games, we saw a slight increase, and that is something that we obviously don't want to see, so we've got to evaluate that further. Try to understand a little bit more of the circumstances of when that happened. We got some early data on that, and so I think that needs a lot more. I think the great thing about where we are right now is not only understanding the numbers, but more importantly, how these actual injuries are current. We can look at the video, we can look at the medical information and try to understand the exact circumstance, see if there's either a trend or something that we need further changes on, whether it's in preseason policies or techniques that we still want to remove from the game.
Jimmy.
Roger, RPX has confirmed for us that 17-game regular season had been discussed as part of the CBA negotiations. What are your feelings on that, and is that something you want?
Well, again, it is part of the discussions. We've had very fruitful discussions on it, discussing the positive and negatives, the changes to the game that we've made over the last 10 years, which I think are really important as it relates to the safety of the game and how we're preparing and practicing and training our players.
The question has to do with the collective bargaining agreement and
significant impact.
Changes the game to make it safer as part of the discussion with the NFL Players Association.
May or may not be part of whatever we ultimately decide.
Hal from Palm Beach.
Hi, Roger. Curious, as you know, some of the other major sports leagues have draft lotteries to encourage
competitiveness late in the season for teams that may have been eliminated. And has that at all been on the NFL's radar, and would you be in favor of instituting one?
We're obviously well aware of that. It's been discussed over the years. I can remember that being discussed 20, 30 years
Yeah.
ago.
Talking
I
about
think
an in-season
from our
draft
standpoint,
lottery.
We find the draft to be successful on many fronts. One, the competitive side, but also the event itself has grown dramatically. So it's not under active consideration. It hasn't been raised by either the committees or the clubs at this stage.
Ian?
I want to follow up, I had something else, but I want to follow up on the 17-game season first. Theoretically, what would the league calendar look like if there were 17 games? Would the Super Bowl just move back a week later?
Yes, we would still start the week after Labor Day. So we would have the same starting week and we would just play 1 week longer.
And then I'm curious on your views on the reviewing pass interference penalties. I know it's just through a month and a half, but what do you think so far about what you've seen? Is the rule what you had anticipated?
Well, again, I would go back. This is something that we
That's
spent a
about
great
the
deal of
pass
time
interference
ago,
rule.
back in the February-March period. Something the coaches felt very strongly, and I think they understood that replay was not going to correct every instant replay or pass interference close call. That is, we're not over officiating here. We're not trying to or possible to make it perfect, and we're not re-officiating these plays. So the thought process was to correct the obvious and clear error. I think the numbers reflect that. That if it's something close and there's not obvious and clear evidence, it's going to stay with whatever is called on the field. And I think the data supports that.
4 of 38
we anticipated,
uses
the
of the
coaches
pass interference
anticipated.
rule
But as you
have
know,
resulted
when there
in
is
an
a rule change,
overturned
there's a
outcome.
period of adaptation. And there's also a period of where people are testing to try to see. So coaches are testing to see what types of changes are going to be made. Are the officials going to be making changes? And I think it's settling out where we expected it to.
Adam, I hear.
Roger, I want to follow up on Hal's question about the draft lottery. If it gets to a point where teams see the benefit of, for lack of a better word, tanking, with stripping down their roster and not having a competitive product, would that potentially change the league's thinking on how to reward those teams the following offseason?
Well, the good news for us is we don't see that. I don't think the league's ever been more competitive than it is today. You see that in teams going from last to first in dramatic fashion. I think that's unique to the National Football League. I think we've been 16 out of 17 years where that's happened. And so for us, the competitiveness of our game is obviously critical. I don't think that's solved with the lottery. I think that's solved by all the other issues that we try to deal with on a regular basis through the competition committee and the league, and trying to make sure our league is competitive.
Albert?
Yeah, Roger, how big a concern is the scene that you saw on Sunday night with the Steelers fans taking over the Chargers game going into the new stadium in LA next year?
I think that's a reality of what you see in a lot of stadiums around the league. Secondary ticketing is a big issue now. We have certain teams that travel better than others, fans. Pittsburgh's notorious for that, by the way. And so, you see that on a regular basis in markets. And I think it's in part the technology and the fact that tickets are available on the secondary platform and more accessible than they have been in the past. And so I think we'll continue to see more of that in many of the markets.
Does it raise concern about
Like Las Vegas.
ability to work long term in LA?
No, not for us at all. We're not seeing that as they're coming into their new stadium, either with the Rams or the Chargers. As I said, this is something that's, I would tell you, is happening throughout the league, and you see it.
Jeremy, yes, ma'am.
Wow. There's your answer, folks. We'll talk about that after the jump, after the
I probably will be getting an update when I get back to New York, but our folks have been working diligently on that, going through materials. There's a lot of material to go through, and when we reach a conclusion, we'll obviously let you know.
Ben Fisher?
In regard to the effort to gather data on lower extremity injuries following up on the concussion work, What is your gut sense of what games might be possible there? The range of injuries that currently happen today in the legs, if it might be worked out through that process?
Well, one of the things is, and again, it goes back to the previous question and my response to that, which is, it's not, you have to get behind the numbers, man. You got to get to understand a little bit about, when the injury occurred, the specifics of how it occurred, the mechanism of injury. Was it on a specific kind of turf? What kind of shoes and cleats were they wearing at the same time? I think all of those factors are things that we're studying to see whether they have an impact. How do we train as teams, as individual players, and at what point in the year does it happen? We started in training camp now where we have an acclimation period. A large part of that is to try to avoid those immediate injuries that happen when you don't have the proper escalation of physical activity. And so all of that is, I think, the model that we created with concussions and the data that we have now, I think, are giving us a better insight to be able to how to address that, and we're confident we can have the impact there, which, as you know, are the majority of the injuries that particularly lead to lost time.
Roger, there's debate every year about officiating. It seems particularly intense this season. What are your...
You say that every year, Tom, by the way.
What are your personal feelings when you see a game like Monday night where there are some pretty clear missed calls that impact one team? And what's your level of confidence in Al Riveron to work out whatever issues may exist right now?
Well, officiating is always a focus for us, and I joke, but I'm not joking. I think I'm close to 40 years, and I think there's always a 2 or 3 week period where there's an intense focus on it. But listen, you never want to see a game where people are talking about officials afterwards. It was a great football game played by 2 great teams that are really, I think, surprising a lot of people about the quality of the way they're playing. And it's tough. It's tough to be in that situation. So we have to continue to do everything to improve officiating. Al and his team and Troy and everyone, we're all focusing on how do we continue to prepare officials. Obviously using technology when we can, but that's sports. You see it in every sport. We've seen it over the last several months, so I know when you go to other press conferences, you ask the same question, Tom.
Following up on my follow-up from before.
I can't remember your follow-up before, but go ahead and give it to me anyhow.
Are expanded rosters a possibility when you guys look at a possible expanded season of 17 games?
Sure. We haven't taken anything.
The question is, in the discussion regarding expanding the season to 17, 18 games, we expand the roster. That's the commissioner basically saying. We'll look at it. So.
Why don't we wrap up Andrew Beaton, Wall Street Journal?
Where's Andrew? Andrew, do you have a question, or do you?
Sure.
Oh.
Aeneas Williams is up.
Ownership, when you guys were talking to them today about how everything's been going and where you see it going from here?
The message for us was, basically for us giving them an update and letting them know that the partnership is working. I tip my hat to Commissioner Goodell for listening to the players and the concerns that they had about the communities that they come from. But that was our message to the owners, that the partnership is working.
And the part I would add is one of the reasons I had this gold jacket when I had a chance to present as it relates to the Players Coalition is because I wanted to make sure, and a reminder from a legend.
It's Aeneas Williams talking. He was cornerback of the Arizona Cardinals, NFL Hall of Fame.
Being involved in what we do, the Players Coalition, when there was an outcry to put the players in their place, I love the way the owners got together and decided what's our place. How do we collaborate with our partners, which are the Players Coalition owners, and how do we now find out what are the causes? And how do we systematically and intelligently help resolve some of the issues that are in some of the communities that a number of the current players and former players have been working. Guys like Anquan have been doing work for a long time before anything ever got public. So once again, our message was, we appreciate it, we're grateful, and thank you. Now, let's continue to use this great game that always, as the question you just asked the commissioner, knows where the goal is. That's what football does. Professional football also, in this country in particular, get the most people together collectively from all socioeconomic backgrounds, regardless of ethnicity and gender. And that's what this great game does.
Any other questions for Aeneas or Q?
Why do you say the partnership? Sure. You say that it's working, the Players Coalition partnership with the NFL. Why, maybe give some examples of why that is.
Why it's working?
Yes.
Good
Well,
question.
I think initially, it was new. I think anytime you have something that's new, there's going to be growing pains. You have to learn. For us, it was just building that trust between the NFL offices and the Players Coalition. But I think, being 2 years in at this point, I mean, we've reached our stride. We're in constant communication. We're on the same page. So that's what I mean by it's working. And we're being effective in the communities that we're working in.
I was gonna say, you're making a lot of changes.
Yeah.
They need statistics, actionable statistics.
The other part I would add to that, Anquan, is my dad makes the statement. He says, son, it's not what people don't know that hurt them. It's what they do know that's not true. And when this collaboration takes place, one of the things I love to do is because I've spent time around owners, been around the commissioner, and you get to know people's heart behind everything that they do. And being on this Players Coalition with owners as well as players, Anquan and myself working, Anna and some of the team, Troy, and seeing the work that not only is being done, but it's being felt. And even though Anquan, they talk about what 1 million and some voters, the impact in Florida, just for an example.
Yeah, just restoring voting rights to former felons in the state of Florida. 1.4 million people being able to vote that previously weren't able to vote. I mean, that's a direct correlation of the work that's being done by the Players Coalition in the NFL.
Okay, that'll do it. Thank you very much.
He said that one of the
Are you watching live coverage here on NFL?
He said that one of the, and that was Anquan Bolden talking, wide receiver who almost came very close to playing for the Raiders. But that's another story. He said that one of the actionable examples that the program post the anthem controversy is working is in signing up 1.4 felons to vote. There are 1.4 million felons in Florida. That's in Florida alone. Clarification. He didn't say that they signed up 1.4 million felons to vote, but they've established a program that's well on its way to achieving the goal of making sure that felons are signed up and have the right to vote. The main issue that, for some particular reason, is being danced around is the fact that this all started because, not so much because of Colin Kaepernick's kneeling. Colin Kaepernick's kneeling during the national anthem started because of this rash of police killings of black men and women that continues to today. Okay? So that's how we got here. And so every time the subject of how the NFL approaches the post-anthem controversy comes up, no one ever asks the magic question. What are we doing to help communities stop this rash of police killings of black people? And that's the question that I'm in a position to pose, so I'll start doing it, start looking at it. Because as you and I both know, the problem hasn't gone away. I mean, look at Texas, okay? And I feel compelled to say we need to fold that concern in with the overarching problem with these mass shootings, which also impact NFL communities. But but I'm hesitant to push that because it would be read by some as taking our eye off the ball of being concerned about what is plaguing America's black community. I should be more succinct. What is plaguing America's low-income black community, but also impacts all African Americans, including NFL players. Let's face it, none of us is immune to this problem. Okay, no, and you have police officers out there who, on two occasions, have shot and murdered. Two recent occasions have shot and murdered a young black man, 26, in Dallas, and a young black woman, I believe around the same age, and also a young parent in the Fort Worth area. So you have Dallas and Fort Worth alone. And we have other examples of heinous crimes done to Sandra Bland, who they say she died in jail, but no one believes that she actually took her own life. But I digress. Okay, those are the hard questions the league really needs to deal with. It knows it. I'm not saying the NFL doesn't know it, but they're also extremely sensitive. And so what we get at the meetings, and I'm not saying this is just a fact, okay? What we get at the meetings, like for example, at the NFL annual meeting, all right, or even at the NFL annual meeting. I missed the spring league meeting, unfortunately, but at the NFL annual meeting, what we get or got was a great presentation by the Boys Club CEO out of Arizona and law enforcement representative, but it was tied to this kind of show about how kids in the area are improving their relationships with police. In other words, they understand how to talk to the officer, that sort of thing. But how does that guarantee? I mean, it's a good idea, of course, to kids not to be afraid, but it doesn't address what police do. Okay? It doesn't address that. And so while all of this is going on, and there's a lot, what's not happening is the magic focus on how to reduce this problem. Because you don't want that to happen to an NFL player, current or retired. And yet, the way the climate is right now, that could happen. Yet and still, okay? So the other issue that's on the table that I thought the commissioner really danced around, that was the greatest dance I've ever seen Roger do. And that had to do with San Diego. I mean, boy, you talk about a two-step, you talk about a bow, right? But but this is something that they prepared for. I mean, they knew the question was coming. And Roger, even as he was answering the question, you could see him smile. Okay? I mean, I kid you not. Look at this. I mean, the beauty of television now is you can sort of go back and
Commissioner.
look at these things, okay? But I wanted you to see Roger's expression. There's another earthquake in California, 3.4. I want you to see Roger's expression as he's talking about this. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. That's let's see here.
You know, when the injury occurred,
See, I'm still winding back here.
When I get back to New York.
Okay, still not there. Yeah.
Yes, and so I think we'll continue to see more of that.
The new stadium in LA next year.
Okay, yeah, here.
I think that's a reality of what you see in a lot of stadiums.
Look at Roger's reaction here. I want you to see this, folks, okay? All right. That, whenever he has that expression, it means he's worked on the answer. Okay? Listen to this. Listen to this.
Around the league, secondary ticketing is a big issue now.
You see how he's smiling? He knows daggone well. Caught you, Roger. Roger knows dang on well that's not the answer anybody is looking for. He knows that. Okay? So that's hilarious. Because the whole question of are the Chargers a viable team, there's that word again, right? In LA, wasn't answered. Roger said it's going to be that way. Not only that, Roger opened up and channeled expectations for Las Vegas. You realize that? Think about it, okay? Because he said, listen to this.
We have certain teams that travel better than others.
That's the first part, which is true.
Fans. Pittsburgh's notorious for that, by the way. And so, you see that on a regular basis in markets. And I think it's in part the technology and the fact that tickets are available on the secondary platform and more accessible than they have been in the past. And so I think we'll continue to see more of that in many of the markets.
See what I mean? Okay? In many of the markets. And, had I been there, I would have chimed in like Las Vegas, but or tried to. You have to be careful there because you don't want to go out of turn because Brian McCarthy's got his cell phone and people, including myself, would text and say, "Hey, I've got a question," right? But I would have wanted to sneak that one in because you and I both know that in Oakland, it is rare to find this. Well, you never found the Coliseum taken over by another team, ever. But what he's telling you is that there is the possibility that in Las Vegas that could happen. He didn't say that. He didn't say Las Vegas. But you and I both know that. I mean, I know. I'm not going to speak for you because we can't have a truly interaction. You're not typing anything, right? But so I don't know how you really feel about this, or any one of you. But my point is that last time I was in Vegas, that was for CES, and I'll be in there again. But I did an informal poll, and about 80% of the people that I talked to were not Raiders fans. And I remember the year before that, when Lyft Uber drivers told me, well, when they come here, then I'll be a fan. And there is that dynamic. There are going to people who want to go to the games, who are curious, they want to see what's happening. Okay, but the way things are shaking out from my non-scientific, anecdotal, informal polling is that you should expect to see a stadium half filled with Packers fans when the Packers come to play the Oakland Raiders, which would then be the Las Vegas Raiders in Las Vegas. When the Broncos play the Raiders, I would not be shocked to see the stadium half full of Broncos fans. And if the Chiefs, when the Chiefs play, remember if you ever see the guy that had the Chiefs Kingdom flag who was a construction worker on the stadium site? We didn't see anybody that had a Raider flag. Okay. What does that tell you? What does that tell me? It tells me that we could see a stadium more than half full of Chiefs fans. They may even try to stage a red out. You know, hey, we're going to go buy your tickets and red out the stadium. And we're going to pay top dollar to do it. I can see that scenario happening. And I don't think that would be good for the Raiders going forward because it's supposed to be their home, right? A number of you have said, hey, you know what? The NFL should have just Super Bowls and Pro Bowls in Las Vegas rather than, one NFL team, which I think is a great idea. But look, that's something that should have been raised as a something for the NFL to do, right? 5 years ago. It didn't happen. 5 years ago, that was 2013, and Mark Davis was chafing at the bit, as we all were, over the Oakland Mayor Gene Kwan's comments about the Prince of Dubai being a financier, the financier for Coliseum City, which would include a new stadium for the Raiders, right? And she said that on the radio, and it was like Prince of Dubai, and the Prince of Dubai added insult to injury by saying, "I'm not involved." And somewhere in that mind of his, Davis got it to, well, because of Napoleon Kaufman the next year, who brought him to Las Vegas. That's where things started. That's where the wheels started turning when Davis received this document that showed that sports gambling could be done in a workable way in Las Vegas with the NFL. All right, folks, I'm going to check in on this latest news about an earthquake. Same fault line, Pleasant Hill. And that's scary. I'm not at home, but that's scary. I live in Oakland, not too far away from there. I mean, I might say not too far. I mean, like, maybe, 6 miles? Thereabouts. By the BART train, something like that. 7 miles. You get the idea. All right, folks, I'll be back later. I'll see you. Thanks for tuning in.